Hello, and welcome to the Illinois LawCast, a podcast about the wisdom, wit, and curiosity of the University of Illinois College of Law. I'm your host, Chris Davies, and in this episode, we will be exploring the opportunities available at the College of Law for undergraduate students. Joining me are Professors Jennie Pahre, Director of Undergraduate Studies, and Meghan Brinson, Associate Director of Undergraduate Studies and Academic Advisor for Undergraduate Studies. They share an overview of our programs, how they have grown, and where the College of Law would like to expand offerings in the future. I hope you enjoy the interviews. Professor Pahre, thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah. So you are the director of our Legal Studies minor program. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Can you tell me a little bit about what is the Legal Studies minor?
Well, it is a degree, a minor degree, that is transcriptable. So it appears on students' transcripts, and it is offered by the College of Law. So we have, of course, majors in different colleges. In the College of Law, we don't currently have a major in law, but we have a minor in legal studies that undergraduates can get.
And what is the benefit for an undergraduate student to have a minor in law?
Well, there's, of course, students that want to go to law school, and it gives them the opportunity to study the law in a deliberate way. But we also think in the College of Law that the law is inherently important and needs to be understood by a larger segment of the population than people that end up getting JDs. We think that everybody should know enough law, certainly to know when you need a lawyer, but everybody will end up working with the law during their life. They'll be tenants, they'll get credit cards, they'll buy houses, they'll buy cars, they may get married, they may have other things happen in their life that brushes up against and with the law. And we think it's a good idea for people to understand how the law works in at least a basic way.
And you can take this without intending to become a JD student here or elsewhere. And there's no requirement if you do want to be a JD student to take this either. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, in the College of Law, we have students from all different kinds of majors. I had a student in my class once that was a music major and very successful student. But the law, again, we think it just should be more broadly taught. And we are a public institution. It's our job to meet the educational needs of the people in this state. And so we, of course, offer the traditional Juris Doctorate degree, and we also now offer this undergraduate legal studies minor credential for students that just want to learn more about the law.
Is there a benefit if you do plan on getting your JD after graduating to being a legal studies minor?
Oh, certainly. We do a review of the major areas of law as part of the core curriculum for our legal studies minor. So you'll learn about constitutional law and contracts. You'll learn about property law and family law and torts and substantive law like that, as well as the procedural law that says how all the substantive law works. And that means that when you get to law school, you'll have a background in the core curriculum that you'll then be unpacking more slowly as a JD student. It certainly would have benefited me. There was no opportunity at Stanford for me to take these types of classes because they didn't really exist. But I was thinking when I was sort of putting all this together, what would have helped me the most when I was in law school? And this sort of preview of the core areas of law, the core cases, the big legal concepts, that was what would have made a real difference for me, I think.
Have you had any students maybe that came through the legal studies minor and ended up here at Illinois Law that have told you anything about how it's benefited them?
Yes, and it has been honestly quite heartwarming. Yeah. It's especially fun for me when I teach my JD students remedies, which is the current JD class I'm teaching, to have students that came through as undergraduates. Last spring, I had 2 students in my remedies class that had come through the undergraduate curriculum and taken my undergraduate courses, and then they appeared in my remedies class, and they told me that things had been good for them. Certainly their first year they felt was a little easier because they didn't have to learn all the concepts all at once and were able to kind of walk into the programming with some basic knowledge. And of course, that made me really happy.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned that you were at Stanford. You didn't have something like this. Going back to that time in your life, what made you want to pursue a degree in the law?
Well, there were a couple of things. I was an international relations and German double major at Stanford. I was interested in World War II. I wanted to understand better how something that was so universally destructive could occur. I'm not sure I got that question answered all the way, but I have a better idea about it. When I graduated from Stanford, I felt that I wasn't done with the academy. It was awfully fun going to school. Wasn't sure what direction to go in. And I had a meeting with my advisor, Theodore Anderson, and he suggested law school. He suggested it because he thought it would be a nice portable career, and he knew at the time I was engaged to Robert Pahre, and that Robert was going to be an academic. So my husband was going to be the academic, and I was going to be the professional. And Anderson told me that it would be very difficult for two academics to get jobs in the same institution. And I'd also seen my father go to law school. He went back to law school when I was a teenager. He was a member of the Air Force and went back on the GI Bill. And he did it at night, just sort of law school on hard mode. You work all day and then you go to night school. And he would come home and talk about what he'd learned in law school. And that was really interesting stuff. I mean, it was fascinating listening to him talk about the topics he was studying. And I thought, well, maybe someday that would work for me. And it all sort of came together.
Yeah. And then you went on to practice in multiple states and districts and had a pretty great law career, it seems like.
I was really lucky. This is nothing I ever intended to do. I took the bar exam in California and passed that and became affiliated with a big firm in downtown L.A. My husband then went on the job market, and the job that he found that was in his field that was available the year he went on the market as an academic was in Michigan. So we moved to Michigan, and I got admitted to the Michigan bar. And then he got a 10-year job offer from the University of Illinois, and so we came here, and I got admitted to the Illinois bar. This is not recommended. 3 bars is, but I was very fortunate during the course of my career. I handled really big commercial litigation cases involving literally billions of dollars of insurance money, all the way down to who got to own a dog in a small claims court. So I felt like the career was good for me. There were some challenges being a woman lawyer in the 1980s. There were not a lot of us in court, but you have to let you come and argue your cases, and they did that. And it eventually we got sort of more of us came along, and it wasn't so odd to see women in court, and then it became very common.
And then what brought you to the academy? What made you want to teach?
Well, the first law class I taught was at the Cady School of Business at Illinois State University. I got a phone call from somebody that said they needed that class taught. It was a professor I'd hired at one point as an expert witness in one of my cases, and he just thought he'd give me a call and see. And so I did that. That was great fun. And the students were just a delight to work with. And I suppose at that point I was hooked. And occasionally the College of Law would call and they needed something taught. They needed evidence taught. They needed insurance law taught. The poli-sci department on an urgent basis needed constitutional law taught. And I honestly don't think there's a lawyer in North America that doesn't want to teach constitutional law. I mean, it is just the core of it all. And so I did that for a while. And then eventually the College of Law made me a full-time offer, and I wrapped my practice into another local law firms and just came on board full-time. And
now you're director of undergraduate studies. And what about working with undergraduates in particular appeals to you?
Well, there are, of course, more challenges because they're just a little bit different in terms of their academic formation. They're starting their college experience, but that's also the charm of it. I mean, undergraduates are coming to the academy for their first big adventures in higher education. And I think of it as a real responsibility to find a way to frame the law so that its importance and salience in their lives becomes very clear. And that is an interesting challenge. But law school students, JD students, will stay with you in class because they have stepped into the law. They know they want to make that their career. They know that you're their professor, and they know that grades in law school really matter. But undergraduates, you need to convince them that this is worth their time. And of course, every professor thinks that their course is the most important and the most significantly transformational in terms of learning opportunities, I think I'm right, that law does matter a great deal, and that understanding the law can improve the way that your life functions downstream. And the challenge and the delight is seeing how the students respond to that.
So within the minor, we have a few different tracks, correct?
That's right. We currently have 3 focus areas. There's law and politics, and for the minor, students take some core classes with our JD and with our faculty in the College of Law. And they also take classes in other units on campus to finish the minor. So they can take poli-sci classes for the law and politics focus area. And the political science department has a lot of relevant classes. So that was sort of the first thing we thought of. Mm-hmm. Then there is law and cultures, because, of course, law affects all kinds of things culturally. I mean, there's interest in immigration and LGBTQ plus issues and family law and all these sort of ways that society and the law work together. And so you can take law classes from all these different units on campus, from gender and women's studies, from all units that deal with cultural issues. Mm-hmm. And the last focus area we currently have, we call it food law. It's law and the economics and sustainability of food. And our institution, of course, started as a land-grant school. The major mission was to help farmers find ways to have more successful crops. And we perpetuated that through the learning in the College of ACES today. And students with this focus area and this interest can learn how the law supports agriculture and the things they need to know about the law and the policy issues that might be interesting to them about the law that touch on agriculture.
Yeah. Is any one of those tracks proving to be more popular than the other, or something that you see students talking to you more about?
Well, law and politics seems to be in everyone's mind right now. Mm-hmm. And that's our biggest track. But law and cultures is not far behind. A lot of students that do that. And, of course, a dedicated and determined collection of students do the food law track because they are interested in the issues that revolve around that. We also have another track that we're putting together now. It's law and STEM. For science students, students that are interested in how law touches on things related to STEM subjects. It turns out there's a lot of law classes that are being taught across the academy, not just in the College of Law. Mm-hmm. And we'd love for our students to be able to sort of cohesively grab a bunch of those classes and have a minor that supports what they're interested in learning. And I think we're moving quite sharply in that direction for this law and STEM field.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
What opportunities exist beyond the minor and the tracks within? What other things do undergraduate students have available to them as part of being a University of Illinois student?
Well, there's always things that are going on in the College of Law. Mm-hmm. There's a wonderful speaker series on just about every topic. So it seems like every week there's a lecture, there's an event, there's a networking reception. There's something that undergraduates could be a part of if they only knew about. And one of the things we're doing now is feeding that information to our legal studies minor students so they can come and they can see. A couple weeks ago, we had an Illinois Supreme Court justice come and talk. We've had a conference on the president and the scope of presidential authority. Undergraduates came to that. Want them to feel that they are welcome in the College of Law, that they are part of our learning community, and that they can come and participate in these events and learn a little more if that's of interest to them, and meet people that might be able to help them develop their own thinking about things that matter to them.
How's the reception going for that? I know we want to be a very welcoming place, but with all of our students kind of housed here, sometimes it can seem a little maybe daunting. And as an undergraduate, I could imagine maybe that is amplified a little.
Well, it's true that our College of Law does not have a lot of square footage for extra classrooms, but we've been able to schedule many undergraduate classes in the law building by having them on days that our JD students are not actively taking classes. We have a beautiful library. Undergraduates are welcome to study there, and many of them do, except during finals time when the JD students really need to knuckle in. Mm-hmm. And now we have a cafe that's open, so people can come and caffeinate as well as study here and there.
Great. And you mentioned working on a new track within the minor. What other future plans do you have for undergraduate programs?
Well, a few weeks ago, I was talking with someone in the institution here about a undergraduate law plus CS major, or CS plus law, computer science and law. Mm-hmm. So there is some interest in developing additional curriculum. It'll be downstream a few years because the institution changes slowly.
Sure.
And there's layers of people that have to be consulted. And that's both good, of course. It's frustrating if you want to do something quickly, but it's also good because it means that a lot of people are thinking very carefully about steps you need to take and how they will impact our student population overall. So I have absolute confidence that in 5 years, there will be a major of some form in the law offered by our College of Law. We just have to think carefully about how to make that happen in ways that don't impact our institution adversely, because our primary mission is still to educate our JD students. But, we'll get there.
Yeah, it seems like it's in very good hands.
Well, I feel that our administration in this building is superb. I have never worked with a group of better people, and I've worked with a lot of people. So I'm happy about all that. And the fact that our minor in legal studies was one of the first in the nation, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
There were a few others, but ours, with our focus areas, that was very different. And the institution was eager to make that happen.
That's great. Professor Pahre, I thank you for your time. You've been very informative and a pleasure to talk to.
Oh, Chris, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Jennie Pahre for that great interview. My next guest is Meghan Brinson. A note for our YouTube viewers, an error during recording prevented us from having video for this interview. We apologize for the inconvenience. Professor Brinson, thank you for joining me today. You have one of the more interesting backgrounds, I think, among our faculty here, and you have an MFA degree. I don't think that's common here, maybe not elsewhere either. How did you find your way to a law degree?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I haven't met a ton of other MFA creative writers who have gone to law school. I met my partner, who's also a professor here, when I was in grad school. So while I was in grad school, getting that MFA, and he's an attorney. And so we spent probably about 15 years moving a good bit and meeting a lot of other attorneys who practiced in various different areas. I think the thing about moving around a lot is that you encounter a lot of legal issues. There were different things about different communities that we moved to that were difficult to ignore, that made the different communities different to live in, right, and to raise children in. So I kind of approached law actually from a sort of state and local government interest. Actually, I was interested in things that made life easier for me as a mom on a very local level. And so that was something that I was interested in doing. I had encountered other artists who had issues with contracts, copyright issues. So I was interested in potentially helping my community in that way. My very specific writers community. And I was working, as we were doing all of that, in undergraduate education, so in higher ed, and recognizing that there were a number of legal issues that were sort of unique to the academy. And so I thought that might be a third area that I might be interested in if I went to law school. And after about, 15 years of most of the people that I was meeting being either writers or lawyers, I thought that it would be a good idea. And so that's why I went to law school. I found the work really interesting in a way that I wouldn't have maybe when I was just in my early 20s and was very interested in art.
Yeah, that's a fascinating way to come at it, and not one I've heard before. You mentioned that you were working with undergraduate students before getting your law degree, before coming here. So that's been a long-term, something you're passionate about?
Yeah, I started working with undergraduates actually in 2005. So it's been a long time. Not everybody who gets the MFA ends up being a teacher. I tried other things also when I was at Arizona State. So I worked as an editor. I worked for a nonprofit. That's also something that I'm very interested in. Working with undergraduates is exciting and challenging. So they're people who have a lot of energy, are at a pivotal turning point in their life, a time in their life when for a lot of people they're encountering who they want to be in their future. It's a very forward-looking time for a lot of people. And that's exciting. It's a time when people are laying down the groundwork for how they think about the world and their place in it, their next steps moving forward. And that can be fraught with a lot of challenges. But I do think that it's exciting. It's an environment that I really enjoy.
So tell me a little bit about what you do here at the College of Law for undergraduate students with the legal studies minor.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm the Associate Director of Undergraduate Legal Studies. And that means that I mostly work with undergraduates in the context of being an academic advisor for the law minor, in addition to the classes that I teach. So I teach law and literature, I teach Great American Cases, American Justice. I've taught gender in the law before, which I love. As an academic advisor, I just try to help people navigate the law minor and graduate on time. As the Associate Director of Undergraduate Legal Studies, I am trying to learn more about the other places on campus where law is being taught. It's a very big campus with a lot of really interesting kind of different intellectual disciplines who, particularly at this moment in time, I think are interested in explaining and exploring the law. And so that's fun. So we're working on expanding our course offerings, which I'm sure Professor Pahre and you spoke about. And so learning more about the other projects and the other lenses through which different parts of the university look at law and trying to incorporate those into our program so that we can have this sort of interdisciplinary interrogation and experience into the law that I think is really valuable.
Your background specifically, coming from an area where students normally don't launch a legal career, how does that help you when you're working with other departments, when you're working with students who have an interest in law, but maybe weren't thinking too seriously about it?
I love encountering students who aren't entirely sure if they're going to law school and who come from a variety of backgrounds. It's one of the things that I enjoy the most about encountering students in our minor. We have a lot of students who come from political science and who have been very focused in their pursuit of law for a long time. And I also find them very interesting. Mm-hmm. But it is one of the joys of the job that you get to encounter people from entirely different fields, and they bring a lot of expertise to the classroom. I get to learn a lot from teaching students who come from different backgrounds. And I hope that I can encourage them that there are a lot of different avenues to the law if it's something that they're interested in, and that interest can develop over a lifetime. It's not something that you have to commit to if you're interested in other things, perhaps even more interested in other things in that phase of your life. And I think that students, it seems like a lot of students in the humanities in particular worry if they're going to be prepared for law school, if that's something that they choose to do. And I'm hopeful that I can convince them that you're very, very welcome in law school with a humanities degree, and very interested in different kinds of legal fields as well, where I've worked with a couple judges and spoken to judges in particular, and they're very interested in people who have a lot of experience in reading and writing dense texts and summarizing and analyzing them. And so they get kind of excited actually about an English major, not to plug the English department, but I will. That's something that I think that people are very open to. History, a lot of our humanities majors who I don't see as frequently in the minor. And I hope that we can change that, because there's a real place for undergraduate humanities majors.
We have the track, the cultures and law, correct? And are those the kind of students that you're thinking of, and that you maybe have no preferential treatment, but a soft spot for, perhaps?
I have a soft spot. And also, I think that we haven't reached those students yet as much. If it's because those students are interested in other things, I completely understand that. If, however, they think that it's too late for them after, junior year to start expressing an interest in law, or that their classes aren't going to transfer over to the study of law, that's kind of my concern about the way in which our humanities track, our law and cultures track, it is like one of our less used tracks. And I think that that's just unfortunate because there's so much that those students bring to the classroom, to my classroom in particular, as well as I think to the practice of law. So I'd like to encourage any humanities students out there that we have a track just for you. And you will make a fantastic lawyer if that's what you choose to be.
Now you do teach in the classroom and you're an advisor, so you get a little bit of a extra time with some of these students. Have you had any particularly great experiences with students who have come through the minor and have been in your class?
Ooh, particularly great experiences. I've met a number of really interesting students. So for me, this is going to sound very selfish. I've had students who have gone on to do incredible things, who maybe because they were first generation or had an unusual academic background, thought that was going to be a challenge or an obstacle for them. And it's not. And they got great outcomes. But selfishly, I have had students who, through their independent research and writing projects, have just given me such interesting insights into texts that they've picked, into texts that I'm familiar with and love and have taught multiple times. And I really enjoy that. So I will talk up one of my students who is in my class actually right now, who's working on a project that involves, I guess, let's say medical ethics. It's like turning into sort of an organ donation statute issue, and involving a text which is new to me. It's a television show, but that immediately calls to mind Frankenstein. It's a Frankenstein-esque issue. And the fact that these questions about consent in organ donation, whole body donation, what are the kind of ethical concerns around what you can do, not just legally, but morally with a body that's been donated, are really interesting. So people might be familiar with the show where these sort of dead soldiers actually are being used by a mad scientist to create these super soldier hybrids that are kind of the bad guys of the show. I think is just sort of a fascinating echo of the same kind of questions that are raised in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, for example. Just because you can, should you, has society caught up to the advances in medical technology sufficiently to try to put guardrails around these behaviors that are sort of unsavory? And what does it mean to be human? What does it mean for humanity that we can do these really incredible things, these sort of unimaginable things now with our advances in medical technology? I think that those are really interesting questions, and I really love to see my students grappling with them and bringing all kinds of interesting new insights to me about them. I love learning from them.
Yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. And I'm just wondering, apart from that, what might be your favorite part of your role here as an advisor, as a professor, or working with undergrad students?
You may have gathered that I'm a really curious and a very interdisciplinary person. And so being at U of I, maybe more so than any of my other institutions, which I hope doesn't get me in trouble with them, it just means that there are a ton of opportunities for learning and for learning about all different types of really exciting intellectual inquiries that are happening here from my colleagues, from other departments on campus, my students. I have students in my classroom who are from computer science and from math, and just areas that are not my areas of expertise. And sometimes they'll stay after class and they'll ask me questions, and they are explaining something to me, which is fascinating. So one of my students was talking to me about Bayesian statistics and its potential uses in the courtroom. We started talking about how it is used in baseball and how it might be useful in potentially antitrust cases. They're fascinating. I love hearing from them about what they're really into and they know a ton about, and why that has led them to my classroom in law. There's always a connection. And I think that's my favorite part about being here, is that there is always this connection between these very different intellectual pursuits and that kind of like breadth of knowledge and connecting putting those different people in a classroom where they might be able to have these really interesting conversations with each other is something that just thrills me. I love it.
In the classroom, you do a class specifically on literature and law. So I have to ask you if you have any book recommendations that combine your passion for both things.
I do. I have a ton. And recommendation is such a strong word because I never know what people are going to enjoy. But these are the things that I'm sort of thinking about now. I've taught some of them. Some of them I'm looking at revisiting. There is sort of a theme, but I really am interested in these particular texts right now. So one I already spoke about is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. That is very much because of the conversation I had with my student. I was, oh man, it's been probably 15 years since I've read Frankenstein, but it feels like a very live topic. I'm also going to revisit Shakespeare's Julius Caesar this spring. I think that feels topical, this idea of what we want from a leader, how we respond to a leader who's controversial, whether that response is appropriate or not. I haven't read this play in such a long time. So I'm just curious if that's something which is timely or not. A kind of obscure Arthur Miller play, All My Sons, is one that I've taught before. I mentioned earlier that, or maybe I didn't mention that my husband was in the active duty Air Force for a long time. It's a play about guilt and also about letting down your country in a pretty profound way during a time of war. Another thing that I teach almost every year, C.D. Wright's One Big Self. This is poetry for the poetry fans out there. And I recommend it so highly if you're at all interested in criminal law, mass incarceration. It really investigates not what a crime is, but just who people are who have been on both sides of really traumatic and life-changing circumstances and how we see or don't see them as human. I am rereading Ambrose Bierce's An Incident at Owl Creek Bridge. I continue to be really interested in military justice, the idea of extrajudicial, out-of-court justice, something that maybe it's difficult to call it literature, but I like to teach things that are outside of just written texts. Marina Abramovich's O-Rhythm is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. It's a conceptual art piece. And if you look into that conceptual art performance, which has been replicated a couple of times, I think that it really invites you to think about what happens at the boundaries of society. Like when you have a moment outside of social space, when like rules are set aside, how people behave and act. It's kind of a fascinating question. And then finally, I always do movies in my class. I always like to do film. And this is one that is on my to-watch list. So this is something that I'm going to be watching probably over break. Rebecca Hall's Passing. It's a film adaptation of a book that is sitting on my shelf that's in my to-be-read. And I am very, very interested, not just in this idea that people are forced kind of by the extremity of like social prejudice, but also legal prejudice to change their identity, to hide who they are, to break the law in order to exist. I think that raises really interesting questions about when should laws always be followed, or do some unjust laws need to be challenged and not just with legal methods, but by breaking them. And that's a really difficult and interesting question to raise in the middle of a law school.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly not the first one to raise it. That the idea that there are some laws that are so unjust and that challenge people's ability to exist with dignity in a way that we maybe shouldn't feel obligated to give the full weight of legal authority.
Seems like a great list. I'm going to have to put a couple of those on my to-read pile as well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you sitting down and talking to me about your role in the undergraduate program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Meghan Brinson, as well as Jennie Pahre, for joining me on the podcast. Thank you to all of our listeners as well. We appreciate you listening to the Illinois LawCast. If you would like to share any comments or suggestions for the podcast, please send an email to podcast@law.illinois.edu. You can subscribe to Illinois LawCast on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you find your podcasts. This episode was recorded, mixed, and edited by me, Chris Davies. Special thanks to Kelly Moss for our album art and other graphics, and Krista Getke for her help in the editing process. Until next time, thanks again for listening to the Illinois LawCast.